Hello and welcome to Across the Channel. What a week it's been for Paris Saint-Germain, who, after scoring 7 goals in Leverkusen, put 3 past Brest to return to the top of the table. Lens edged past Marseille in a pulsating encounter. Lyon leave it late to sink Strasbourg. The battle at the top is intense and the quality games just keep on coming. At the other end, Metz look doomed already after shipping 6 goals in Lille. And we ask, is Habib Bey's time up in red now after Sunday's defeat by Nice? Thank you again for joining us for episode 11 of this exciting new podcast venture. I am delighted to say that we have a timely comeback from Tom Williams on today's pod. Tom is a French football writer and expert and also a pundit on French television with Canal+. So bonjour, bienvenue Tom, comment ça va?
Bonjour Matt, ça va très bien, merci. I'm very happy to be back in your company, looking back on another fantastic weekend of Liga action.
Very relieved that you switched back to English there. And
I was wondering how long I could carry that on, but I mean, we don't want to alienate any listeners at this early stage.
Well, we have a good French speaker making his Across the Channel debut this morning. So bienvenue, a warm welcome to French journalist and African football expert Karim Balde. Karim, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, hello, Matt. Bonjour à tous. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure for me to be part of your podcast for the very first time.
Well, it's great to have you. Karim is somebody that I bump into quite regularly at the Parc des Princes, notably, and he's always full of bonhomie. Is that the word? Bonhomie and plenty of bonhomie and plenty of
word.
Plenty of football insight. Let's jump straight into the action. I was in Brest on Saturday for their game against PSG. Brest, I think they're probably fed up with Paris Saint-Germain these days. They played them 4 times last season, let in 18 goals. They lost 10-0 in that 2-legged Champions League playoff. They battled hard on Saturday, and it was a contest, I'd say, for the first 20 minutes, but PSG were really impressive. Achraf Hakimi scored 2 super goals. Désiré Doué came on, and he scored late. 3-0, the final score. Karim, is it safe to say that PSG have recovered from their little blip? They've got their big players returning from injury now, and they're back on top of the table.
Yes, I think we can say it because during this small period of time where they drew twice against Strasbourg and then against Lille, they have some doubts about Luis Enrique's squad because of injuries and the huge amount of injuries. But we all know that this season is going to be quite special for PSG because they played so many games in 24-25 that we were sure that we'll see some injuries, and that was the case with major players, key players such as Ousmane Dembélé, Désiré Doué, and others. So, yeah, we can say that with Saturday's game against Brest, we saw good signs from Désiré Doué. I know we'll talk about it a little bit later on, but yeah, it's good to point out that the management of the squad was quite good with youngsters such as Seny Mayulu, which is improving as well from last year. We saw also Quentin Jantou at the end of the game. So yeah, it's a good mix between youngsters and key players. And for Achraf Hakimi, it's great to see him scoring again. We know that there are so many players who can score in that squad, and we almost forgot that Hakimi could do it. But yeah, that was in a great way on Saturday with a double. So yeah, definitely, I think PSG is on the good way back to perform in the next weeks.
Yeah, and what is a bit ominous for the rest, Tom, is that they've had this blip, if you like, those 2 draws, a defeat at Marseille, and they're top of the league, and they've got everybody coming back. And it was an absolute joy to watch some of their football on Saturday. I mean, Hakimi is an unbelievable footballer. Vitinha was fantastic, and Désiré Doué, he's just irresistible. He came on, played 20-25 minutes, could have scored a hat-trick, hit the post, had a shot go wide. But it is, I think, ominous is probably the word, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, those of us who follow French football, at the beginning of every season, you cling to any indication whatsoever that you might be about to get an actual title race. And PSG have had a bit of a wobble, obviously losing at Marseille, then those back-to-back draws against Lille and Strasbourg, and coupled with the injury problems that Karim mentioned, and Marseille starting the season well, and a few other teams starting the season well, and you start to think, oh, maybe is there potential here for an actual title race? I do think that some of the bigger teams are better placed than they have been for some time to run PSG close, but all of a sudden, almost all of the key players are back. I think João Neves and Fabian Ruiz were the only significant absentees against Brest. We're expecting them to be back pretty soon. And you find yourself thinking, maybe that was it. Maybe that is as good a chance as PSG's rivals are going to get, because, they've managed to get through this period relatively unscathed. They're flying in the Champions League. They showed against Brest that they're capable of beating decent, solid, well-coached Ligue 1 teams without really having to move out of third gear, and it is pretty ominous. But what can you do when you've got that collection of players? And they showed last season the fantastic football they're capable of playing. It is becoming harder to make the case for a different title winner this season. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and like I say, Brest weren't bad. They had a couple of chances, a penalty, and then right at the end, Mama Balde was clean through on goal. But 3-0 was absolutely a fair reflection. It could have been more from Paris Saint-Germain. And I went to the mix zone after the game, where if you're lucky, you get a couple of players coming along and chatting. Lucas Chevalier did the honours for PSG, and I was there listening to Joris Chotard, the Brest midfielder, who was saying, look, we're doing okay. 2 draws, 2 defeats in our last 4, and obviously this is a game where we don't really expect to get anything. And I kind of felt for him, one, because he looked absolutely shattered, like he had been running after PSG players all afternoon. And then a journalist said to him, is it not like a little bit hard though, Joris, when you come off the pitch after a game like that and it doesn't even look like PSG are tired? And there was that feeling, that they won almost in second or third gear. They were 2 up and then brought on Dembele, Doué, I'm not sure who else, Marquinhos came on. I mean, Karim, it is, I think we have to accept as well, like what Tom said is right. I think, Marseille looks strong, maybe Lyon, maybe Monaco, maybe even Lens can push them. But we're talking about a team, for me, that is still very much the best team in Europe.
Yeah, and there is still a huge gap between PSG and other teams in the French Ligue 1, in my opinion. And what we saw in Brest, and the journalist you mentioned was right to point out to Joris Chotard, because that was the case in the second half. The way they passed the ball for sometimes 1 or 2 minutes, Brest players couldn't touch the ball. They just have to run behind the ball, and that was a shame to see that. I mean, I'm not a Brest fan, but I mean that we all were all amazed by their journey into the Champions League last season, which ended quite badly against PSG. And Matt, we were together at in Guingamp last year for the round of 16 game, or that was the playoff game, I think. But yeah, definitely it was hard to see that they have to run behind the ball for the whole second half. And despite that penalty, and we'll talk about it later on, Brest couldn't do anything. They played not so badly in terms of tactics, but the thing is that the gap is too big, in my opinion, and they were too naive defensively, and especially for the second goal of Achraf Hakimi, because how is it possible to let 2 PSG players, Kvaratskhelia and Hakimi, playing a 1-2 ball inside the box in between, like, I think 6 or 7 Brest players? I mean, this is not acceptable at that level, and especially against PSG. So yeah, there's a huge gap, and we saw it, and especially in the second half.
Yeah, Karim, you alluded to that penalty, because Brest did get a penalty at 2-1. I'm going to move on to Karim Balde's top and flop from round 9, because Karim, I think your flop is related to this Brest PSG game.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not the penalty itself that shocked me. It was the way the VAR... Yeah, it could be as well. It could be because, if we interpret the rule with the hand, first the ball came into Kangenli's head, and then it touched his hand. But that was a penalty according to the ref. But I was shocked about the decision-making process, which led to that penalty, because at first, after I think 5 or 6 minutes waiting for a decision by the VAR referees, they decided not to give a penalty for Brest. And then there was some Brest players and a Brest coach were mad, obviously. And then all of a sudden he decided to go to see by himself on the screen. And I don't understand, because there is no VAR announcement inside at the stadium, which is the case now in the Premier League, for example, or in the Italian league since this season. That's not the case in French League One, because it was too expensive because of the TV right mess. So they decided to postpone it up to, I don't know, maybe next year. We'll see. But yeah, and as soon as there is no VAR announcement from the ref to the attendants, in my opinion, it would be better if that decision would be clear. Once it's done, it's done. According to the rules, the ref can overthrow his own decision up to resuming the game. But it's not clear for us viewers at home and for the attendants at the stadium to see that kind of flip-flop in terms of decisions.
That's what I say. That's what I want to say, Karim, because first of all, as a commentator, and I people don't have sympathy for me probably, but I'm not hearing the exchange with VAR, so I'm looking at the replays. But it was 7 minutes and 18 seconds that it took for this to be decided. They had to look at whether Ajorc was offside at the free kick, and then they analysed the handball. Does it hit his arm? But like you were saying, is it head and then arm? Anyway, it took 7 minutes and 18 seconds. It maybe didn't help Roman Del Castillo as well, who was thinking about what he was going to do with his penalty for 7 minutes and 18 seconds. But before you tell me about what Del Castillo did, like for the supporters, yes, it was annoying for me, but it was freezing in Brest. We had this wind coming in from the sea, like you often do in the stadium, and they're just sitting there for 7 minutes going, no idea what's going on. Is it going to be a penalty? Don't know. And it's not. Yeah, it shouldn't happen.
It's so frustrating, particularly when you're in the stadium, and I think it shows a real lack of respect for match-going supporters. The fact that you just stand there or sit there wondering what's happening with no idea, with no information, and then, after 7 minutes, play resumes. And we've spoken about this on previous episodes, but for me, and I think particularly because I follow Liga and the Premier League, it again speaks to the cultural differences between those two countries. You look at the direction of travel with regard to VAR in the Premier League, for example, and Howard Webb, who is in charge of the referees in England, is trying to take VAR out of the game as much as possible, come to a quick decision, and only in relatively rare circumstances should the VAR intervene and overrule the match referee. Let's try not to dwell on these VAR issues unless it kind of, the error is so blatant that it leaps out and literally slaps you in the face. Let's just carry on. And in France, it's almost a completely different approach. And I think it speaks to cultural differences between the countries. I think in France, the feeling is, well, there is a correct way of doing things. There is a correct way of officiating. And when you find yourself with a situation like this, the most important thing is not to do it quickly, is not to, get on with the game, is not to leave spectators standing there freezing their butts off for 7 minutes. It's to get the decision right, and that's why you get these long VAR delays in France, and I find it massively frustrating. And I'd love to see French officials move in the direction of the Premier League, perhaps not all the way, but it seems like they're two kind of extreme ends of the VAR spectrum. Which is making time for it, and one which is trying really hard not to.
But sorry, Tom, I think it's interesting because I actually think it was the other way around 2 or 3 years ago, and the Premier League was intervening a lot in VAR, and I think it was Pascal Garibillon, if I'm not mistaken, who was in charge. There's been a change at the top of the French refereeing, and I think you're right. It has now gone the other way, where they're re-refereeing too much and it's taking too long. And I just want to say, because what happened was hilarious, unless you're a Brest fan or unless you're Roman Del Castillo. But even his coach, Eric Roy, made a bit of fun out of him, saying, he had plenty of time to take the mud out of his studs or whatever. But anyway, after all this waiting, Del Castillo stepped up, and the poor guy did a John Terry, I guess. His standing foot slipped, and he's just completely sliced it horribly over. And that kind of, it was like the damp squib of Brest's chances, just like going, boom, okay, well, if you're not going to score a penalty, you're not going to get anything out of this. But it's, you know, it was an eventful weekend, and there are one or two more, I think, cultural interpretations we'll be talking about, particularly in the Strasbourg-Lyon game. But Karim, I want to move on, and I want to have your top. I want a bit of positivity here. Who was your top from the weekend?
Yeah, my top is Hamza Igeman from Lille. He arrived from the Glasgow Rangers last summer, and he's Lille's best striker as of now, and he's on fire since the international break of October, scoring versus Nantes first, and then he scored a double in Europa League, and despite the defeat against PAOK Salonique. And what he did on Sunday by scoring that first goal for Lille against Metz, that was a blowout, 6-1 for Lille against Metz. But it confirms that Igeman is definitely one of the best players of that squad, even if he's only a sub. And Bruno Genesio, his head coach, said before the game that he's still in the hierarchy behind Olivier Giroud, because Olivier Giroud is the number one striker for the Dogs. But we saw that Hamza Igeman knows how to take his chance, and he knows how to get out the bench and then to create good action. And Bruno Genesio say that he was unpredictable, and which is a good thing, because the game plan of Lille is quite good, but it's good to have that kind of player which can surprise the opposite side each and every time. And I think that Igeman realizes a very good entrance into the French football. It's very different from what he met in Scotland, and we talked about cultural differences between the Premiership of Scotland and France. It's quite different, but yeah. His adaptation is going very well, so kudos to Igeman.
I think it's a good shout. He's a really exciting player when I've seen him. Very direct. He runs at defences, and I think what's interesting, Tom, is that he's really different to Olivier Giroud. Like, not many are like Giroud, but you know, great presence, Giroud. He's not the most mobile of players, we know that, but he's a terrific finisher, and I think that. I'm talking about complementarity, even though Bruno Genesio doesn't play the two. But when Igeman comes on for Giroud, it suddenly presents the defence with a new problem. Do you think he might consider playing the two? Because Igeman is now on a hot streak. He's got 4 in his last 3 games, if you include the double he got in Europe as well.
It would be great to see. You look at their two profiles, Giroud and Igeman, and you can imagine them working well together. Giroud is like the point de fixation, and Igeman, kind of working off him. We know that Bruno Genesio tends to favour a single striker system, so it's going to be hard to fit them both into the same starting 11. I guess we might see them combine late on in matches when Lille are chasing the game. But yeah, I think Igeman is a fantastic player to watch. Very kind of unusual physically, very sort of stocky, powerful player, but a brilliant dribbler, and a real sense with him that, he's capable of anything. Giroud has obviously made a fantastic return to French football. And yeah, not bad to have two such different strikers, among your attacking options.
Yeah, Lille are doing well. They're back in the mix with that victory, and when you consider all the players that they lost in the summer, I won't go through the whole list, but Chevalier, Diakite, Jonathan David, etc., they've bought well, and Genesio, we know, is a very good coach. So the pressure was on Marseille to win in Lens on Saturday night. They needed the points to move back above PSG, and they started well when Mason Greenwood scored a lovely goal, his 7th of the season. But Lens are showing that they are a tough and well-drilled side under Pierre Sage. They hit back through Odson Edouard's penalty, and then they grabbed what proved to be the winner early in the second half, Benjamin Pavard putting through his own net. It finished 2-1 to Lens. Les Soyeurs are up to second, a point behind PSG. Marseille in third now. And Tom, I think it's important to stress, first of all, that this was a terrific game of football, wasn't it? And we're seeing so many exciting games. This was right up there.
Yeah, fantastic game of football. Obviously, the clocks went back this weekend, and it felt like one of those kind of winter matches that really kind of warms you up, particularly the fact of being played in Lens in the evening on a chilly October night. But yeah, brilliant game of football, and unfortunately for Marseille, almost an identical scenario to the game against Sporting in the Champions League, in that they started very well, went ahead and then shot themselves in the foot. Mason Greenwood curls in a lovely goal to put them ahead after 17 minutes. And then they concede the penalty, which enables Lens to equalise. And then poor old Benjamin Pavard, who conceded the penalty, then goes on to score the own goal that gifts Lens victory. But yeah, a fantastic game of football. And you have to take your hat off to Pierre Sage. Even going back to last season, you think the number of players who Lens lost midway through last season, even just in the defensive sector, Brice Samba, Abdou Kodir Koussanov, Kevin Danso, your two starting centre-backs and your goalkeeper all departing, and they've had to completely rebuild. They've got a new coach, obviously, in the form of Pierre Sage, and they've had some fantastic results this season. That fantastic 3-0 win against Lille in the derby, and then more recently a winning away to Auxerre, winning at home to Paris FC, and then a very impressive win against Marseille. And you just kind of assume that they're not going to be able to sustain it because they don't have the resources of clubs like Marseille, clubs like Monaco, without even mentioning PSG, but they're so well coached. They signed really intelligently over the summer. You look at the profile of players they brought in, Samson Baidoo, who has been one of the best centre-backs in Ligue 1 since the start of the season, Mathieu Udol, who's arrived from Metz, brought all of his experience, Florian Thauvin, back in Liga, and he was absolutely fantastic again. There was that one fantastic run that he went on, nutmegged Matt O'Reilly and put a shot wide. Obviously really enjoying his football again. Odsonne Edouard, who kind of looked like he'd lost his way a little bit, has been picked up and scored a really nerveless Panenka penalty. So chapeau Pierre Sage, and a sign that it is possible to play good football and to achieve results and to beat some of the best clubs in France, even when you don't have a huge amount of resources. It takes a bit of shrewd recruitment. It takes excellent coaching. And it takes the belief to go out and approach games like that on the front foot.
Yeah, Lens up to second. Karim, I want to get your view on Lens, but first of all, I just want to have a bit of a go at Florian Thauvin, who was terrific. Didn't take the penalty, thought, against Marseille. He's a Marseille legend. I'll leave this one to Odsonne Edouard. Fair enough. But for me, okay, it's one thing not to celebrate a goal against your former team. But Florian Thauvin, he took this to another level at the weekend. Lens had these big celebrations in the changing room, and there was a camera in there, and Florian Thauvin, out of respect for Marseille, decided not to join in with the home side celebration. I mean, come on, Florian. Live for the moment, enjoy it. Do you really think Marseille fans would have been like, oh, he's celebrating a win again? I don't know. Or maybe
the thing is they would. They would. We know they would. We know what Marseille fans are like. Like, it's insane. Of course he should be celebrating. He should be allowed to celebrate.
He wants that ovation at the Velodrome, doesn't he? Later this season.
Exactly.
But you know what the Marseille fans can feel about Thauvin celebrating with an opposite side. So you answer to your own question.
Karim, Florian Thauvin's doing really well. Odsonne Edouard, it's another interesting one, isn't he? Because he was talking. There was an interview in L'Equipe at the weekend. He was talking about how difficult it was for him last year. He had a bit of a go at Ruud van Nistelrooy because he was I think he was on loan at Leicester, and he made the comment which I quite like, but it's a bit harsh. But he said, being a great striker doesn't mean you're going to be a great coach, and that was a bit of a go at
spot the Arsenal fan.
But likewise, Pierre Sage wasn't a great player, but he is a great coach. How are you enjoying this Lens side, and who's sort of catching your eye?
Yeah, this is a story of great comebacks to talk about Florian Thauvin first and then Odsonne Edouard. Florian Thauvin, he has a great career in Marseille, but then we lost him a little bit once he was in Italy, and when he decided to come back to France, we couldn't even imagine that we would go back to the French national team, which was the case in October, thanks to many injuries, but still, he went back to the French national team, and then he scored. That was kind of great story for Florian Thauvin, and regarding what he's done at Lens since he arrived, managed to bring his experience on the pitch and his qualities as well, because we were wondering whether he could have this level of quality we knew from Florent Thauvin before. And in my opinion, that's the case, even if he doesn't celebrate against Marseille, but that's not a big deal for Lens supporters, because the way he leads the attacking line of Lens is very, very, very good for the moment. We hope that we keep on that way, but I'm sure that it's going to be the case for Florent Thauvin, because the environment surrounding this club is very good since the beginning of the season. We talked about the atmosphere at the Stade Bollard, and I've been there several times, and even if it's a chilly October, November or February, we don't care in Lens, because they know how to put the warmth inside the stadium. And each time I've been there, each time that was such a great night, even if the temperature was low, because it's always sold out. I think I don't remember the figure, I think for the 30-something time in a row. It's a sold-out crowd, and this city is just incredible in terms of football frenzy. So, and Florent Thauvin knows how to take that from the supporters to put into the pitch up to the last minute. And a quick word about Alton Edouard, because he was at the PSG Academy a while ago under the protection with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and he said it in the interview that at that time Zlatan and even Marco Verratti was kind of his protectors, but it's been a while ago. And for Alton Edouard, he has such a weird journey. You talked about what happened in Leicester, for example, and even in Toulouse, where he was involved in some off-the-pitch odd stories. And so to see him calmer and maybe more more wise. He's wise. He seems wiser now. I saw him after the game on the French broadcaster, and he seems to be quieter and wiser today, which is definitely a good thing regarding his reputation he had, and especially what happened in Toulouse.
Yeah, you know how the French, they like talking about the classement virtuel. Like, you know, usually they talk about that during the game to say, you know, if the scores stay like this. So I just want to say in my classement virtuel, Lens are top because they're playing Metz on Wednesday. So I think we can give them 3 points now. Is that harsh? No laughs. That's okay. My humour's not working, and any Mets fans listening will be upset with me, I'm sure.
I mean, for Lens, this is going to be a good sign for Lens if they win against Metz, because they have to pursue that path to be a potential, not say a title contender for the moment. It's maybe a little bit early to say it, but a contender for the podium or the top 5 of this French league.
Yes. Now it is half time. The whistle is about to blow. There we go. A chance for me to remind you, dear listener, to rate, review and subscribe on your podcast platform. Across the channel needs your support. We also have our YouTube channel up and running now. So if you want to see just how good looking Tom and Karim are, please do check us out there. Subscribe as well to Across the... I'm not laughing there. I'm being genuine. Subscribe
good, thanks.
To Across the Channel on YouTube. There are lots of fun clips as well as all of the podcasts. Now, quiz time. Last week I asked the listeners who, after Mason Greenwood, was the last player to score 4 goals in one game for Marseille. And the answer, as quite a few of you got, is Jean-Pierre Papin, who did that against Lyon in 1991. Well done to Chris Cole, George Rodriguez, Pierre Carpentier, Abiba and Henri Marchand. You all got it right, and that means that Pierre and Georges are currently top of our leaderboard with 3 points. This week's question. And still time, you know, if you haven't got any points yet, it's very early days. So get involved. If you think you know the answer, email us league1podcast@gmail.com. Brest played Paris Saint-Germain on Saturday. My question is, can you name 5 players to have played for Brest, PSG and France? You get 2 points if you get all 5. You get 1 point if you name at least 3. And you'll get 3 points if you name more than 5. I don't think there are more than 5, but if you find them, then you'll get 3 points. Tom and Karim, top of your head, you don't say them, but any idea?
We've got 1. So that's a start. I'll have to give it some thought. At least 1. I've got at least 1.
Karim, you're too young now
Yeah, not
to
so
remember
much.
these
Yeah,
guys.
this is a tough question, by the way, because Brest wasn't in the French top tier for a while. So I'm sure that while answering the question, we have to go very, very deep into the past, right?
Well, yeah, you're too young, Karim. But listen, our listeners are pretty knowledgeable, I have to say. Some of them extremely knowledgeable. So I place the bar quite high. We're going to kick off the second half in Rennes now. There's a lot of focus on Abibé after his team was beaten 2-1 by Nice on Sunday. Sofiane Diop scored an absolute beauty for Nice. Jonathan Klaus made it 2-0 before half-time with another good goal. It was even better because he just got injured before scoring, and he didn't celebrate his goal because his leg hurt, but it was a great shot. He went off at half-time. And although Rennes pushed hard in the second half, they could only manage one goal through Ayet Boudelal. So Nice are up to 8th. Rennes are 3 points further back in 10th. They've won just one of their last 8 games. Karim, would you say it's fair that Abibé is coming under so much pressure less than a year after taking charge?
Yeah, it's fair to see Habibé under pressure because that's part of football. When a coach doesn't get the results expected, obviously he will be on the hot seat to get out of his job. But in my opinion, I don't want to defend too much Habibé, but I think that this campaign against him is a little bit over-exaggerated regarding what happened to other coaches at the same position in terms of results, because he saved Rennes last year. When he arrived in Rennes, that was a catastrophic situation, let's be fair, and they were struggling to stay into the top tier of French league, and very quickly he could bring the points needed not to sweat in the end of the season in the last 4, 5, 6 match days of the season. So they had a quite a nice end of season in Rennes, and they had time to build. And the problem is that we thought that this year would be better, and in terms of quality, in terms of results as well, it's not very, very, very good for the moment, let's be honest, because we have many players which have to be better. We can talk about Seko Fofana, the goalkeeper, but anyway, they have to be better. Like key players, even Ludovic Foulas, for example, they have to be better on the pitch. And it's very hard to analyze why it's going wrong in Rennes with a good head coach and good players on the pitch. But it's like the mayonnaise, as we say in French, la mayonnaise ne prend pas. So the mixture of all of that didn't lead to a great result. So yeah, it's hard to translate that one, by the way. Yes, but yeah,
hang on. But Tom's written a book on football language, so I'm going to throw that one to you. Whether the mayonnaise isn't taking, how do we say that in English, Tom?
Yeah, how do we say that in English? I guess we would just say that the team isn't gelling. That's the closest thing I think that we have. But as so often when it comes to the language of French football, the French equivalent of that is so much more evocative and, of course, food related. As so much of French football language is.
I was going to say, Tom, I'm going to interrupt because a lot of people are saying the carrots are cooked for Abibé. That's another one, isn't it? Les carottes sont cuites.
Yeah, having sort of studied the language of international football more closely than most, it is remarkable how many food-related metaphors you find in, French football terminology. Like a great pass is a caviar. A fantastic piece of skill might be a café crème. You might describe a fantastic long-range shot as une patate. There's just food everywhere, and of course it is. This is France. What else would you expect? Of course.
Listen, Rennes, famous for their galette saucisse, but we're not going to talk too much about food. Karim alluded to the summer signings, Tom. I know Brice Samba, Seko Fofana came in earlier, didn't they? They came in January. But what's interesting, and a lot of people are aiming criticism, maybe not at Habibé, but at Arnaud Puy, who became president after doing fantastic work with Lens. And actually, he's put a lot of their money into recruiting these Lens guys. Brice Samba, Seko Fofana. We saw Frankowski come off the bench and, to be fair, did all right, put in some good free kicks and corners. But they're not performing as well. So, of course, you don't sack a president when results aren't going your way, but it's not all about Habib Beye, this, is it?
Yeah, I mean it's confusing, and I think some of Rennes' recruitment has been confusing because one of Habib Beye's great successes last season was putting Jaoui Cissé in the team. You know, this young French central midfielder who wasn't really getting a look in previously, and Beye decided to put him in, and he was an absolute revelation. Was one of France's best players at the under-21 Euros last summer, and you thought he was really going to kick on. But Rennes have signed so many central midfielders and so many kind of proven central midfielders that there's no longer a space for him in the team. You know, there's Seko Fofana, who was playing on the left against Nice, which is obviously not his best position. There's Valentin Rongier, there's Madi Camara. So that's a little bit confusing. They've signed two centre forwards in Esteban Laporte and Brillin Bolo, who I think have been among Rennes' more successful signings. And part of it is because Habib Beye seemed determined to play in a 3-5-2 system. But one of the consequences of that is that there's no obvious role in the team for Ludovic Blas, who has been one of Rennes' best players over the last few seasons. So he ends up being stuck out in a right wing-back role, which I don't think is his best position. You want him in more central areas where he can influence things. So it doesn't feel like the recruitment has been all that joined up. I mean, on paper, Rennes should be right up there in the mix for European football. And you look at the fact that a club like Lens, for example, are managing to punch above their weight so successfully, having spent nothing like the money that Rennes have spent, and Rennes have really kind of assembled this collection of proven Ligue 1 performers and find themselves mired in mid-table. It is very underwhelming.
Yeah, and Rennes are famous for their youth academy, and I think they lost their way last year when Frédéric Massara came in as sporting director, formerly of AC Milan, and they just suddenly started bringing in players from all over Europe, all over the world, and they were selling a lot of the younger players. So they have now gone back to the model whereby they are blooding players from the academy. We saw Ayat Boudlal come on and score. We saw Kader Meite. I mean, what a striker he is going to be. You talked about Laporte and Bolo coming in, and they're both good players. In the 28 minutes on the pitch that Kader Meite had yesterday, he just wreaked havoc and scored what everybody thought was a great equaliser in added time. And it was a brilliantly taken goal. Chested it down, smashed it in. The place went mad, and our friend VAR intervened, and he was about 6 inches offside. But Kader Meite, another important player. And it's important for Rennes to keep that part of their DNA, isn't it? To keep these youngsters having opportunities.
Yeah, and you described well the huge U-turn they did after Massara's era to come from a system where you buy many players from what we can call exotic countries, and especially Scandinavia, to come back into a squad with full of youngsters and full of academy players. They are kind of in between situation right now, which is hard for Habib Beye, because when there is no straight line in terms of direction, sporting direction, it's hard to mix up on the pitch, and that's the problem for Habib Beye now. How to cope all those players with Meite on one side, Ambolo, Ludovic Blas, and others. So that's the key part of the problem, I think, for Habib Beye. And to conclude on youngsters such as Meite, and we can quote other players as well. Yeah, they always have a good academy, one of the best in France for years now. But many players could evolve outside of Rennes. We can talk about Ousmane Dembélé, we can talk about Eduardo Camavinga, and others. So yeah, many names in our head which were born and raised, I will say, in Rennes, but who had their best moments of career outside of Rennes, even before, like they couldn't perform at the top level in Rennes, and they already left. And that was the case for Ousmane Dembélé, which is now a Ballon d'Or. No, so yeah,
he is
definitely. I think like they have to keep they have to keep their young players in the longer term. I think to allow the club to take advantage of their own academy system before seeing them going out for a huge amount of money.
It's going to be interesting to see if Rennes can turn it around, if Abid Bey can turn it around. They've got a lot of quality, no doubt about that. Nice, by the way, seem to be back. They've followed up their win over Lyon with a really good win against Rennes. They got a good draw with 10 men in Monaco before that. So Francaise, despite having a lot of players out injured still, particularly in defence, really good result for them. And they're in the top half. A little aside, though, as we're talking about Rennes, and Karim, you've just kind of like brought me onto this. So I want to put this to you and to the listeners. Can you imagine the team that Rennes would have possessed if they hadn't needed to sell players over the years? I've been giving this thought over the weekend. You could have Désiré Doué, Eduardo Camavinga bossing things in the midfield, Jeremy Doku on the left wing, reigning Ballon d'Or Ousmane Dembélé on the right, and then I'd suggest Rafinha maybe playing just off Serhou Guirassy in attack. And honestly, I think that team would win the Champions League. I haven't even bothered picking a defence because the opposition, I don't think they'd get near the ball. Any thoughts, guys? Tom, what do you think? Rennes to win that Champions League with that team? I mean, it would have been nice, wouldn't it, if they'd have kept them all together?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is one of the issues that Ligue 1 clubs have. I mean, they are obliged to sell these diamonds when they emerge from their academies, and so we never really get a chance to see them playing together. And it is unfortunate because there are lots of clubs that you could say that about, but I think Rennes in particular, because their academy is so good, and I think because they have particularly succeeded at producing a certain kind of attacking players. Like the number of, like, if you're a fan of dribbling, for example, which I am, like, there haven't been many better French clubs to watch. There haven't been many better clubs to watch in world football in recent years than Rennes. The number of kind of tricky wide players they've had and creative attacking midfielders has been remarkable. I mean, I would absolutely love to have them all in the same team, seeing them lay waste to Ligue 1 and potentially European football. And again, yeah, I guess it's testament to the fantastic work that Rennes do in their academy, that they remain standard bearers for French youth development.
And there are plenty of guys I didn't pick. I decided Yoann Gourcuff was a little bit old because I'm looking at the last 10 years, so it's like Ousmane Dembélé onwards. But so many academy kids, Karim, and it's testament to them as well. And like Tom says, inevitable really that they're not going to be able to keep these guys.
Yeah, but at least you can keep them maybe for 1 year or two. When we look at Eduardo Camavinga's transfer to Real Madrid or even Désiré Doué, they go out even before giving like a full season with their club, which can allow the club to qualify, for example, for the Champions League. Rennes in the Champions League, you talk about it, maybe this team altogether, they can compete, maybe they could win the Champions League. When we look at the last 20 years, how many seasons did we see Rennes in the Champions League? I think only one. I remember one campaign in the last 10 years, and that's a shame. They have a couple of campaigns in Europa League, and I remember one of them when they beat Arsenal at home, and I was there, I think it was in 2019, I think, because it was the day after the PSG versus Man United, harsh defeat for PSG at that time. But still, like, it's always like some stints into European football, but not a regular presence into the European scene. And that's a shame with that quality of players they can develop.
Just Karim, I know that Arsenal they've lost to PSG and Lens in recent times in the Champions League, but just to be clear,
Sorry
that
to
was
say it out loud with Matt, by the way.
I just to set the record totally straight, Rennes, that was Europa League, and Arsenal edged through at the Emirates 2-0, and Socrates got sent off. Maybe
Indeed.
not sending off at Rozon Park. Anyway, I'm off topic again. Tom is reminding me. Tom, we're going to go back on topic now. We're going to go to you, because it's top and flop time. So, Tom Williams, who impressed you at the weekend? Who didn't?
So my top is Mathis Sablin, the Nantes forward, one of the most exciting young players in Ligue 1. Looked like he might be about to leave Nantes over the summer. He was linked to Marseille. He was linked to Paris FC as well. But Nantes managed to sell quite a lot of other players, so they put a €40 million price tag on his head and said, well, look, unless someone is prepared to cough up, he's staying put. And Nantes have had a bit of a frustrating start to the season, as has Ablin himself. I think he'd had 20 shots at goal without scoring prior to their game at Paris FC on Friday. He'd hit the woodwork 4 times, including twice in the 2-0 defeat against Lille the previous weekend. Anyway, it's 1-1 shortly before half-time on Friday night. A corner goes into the Paris FC box, is cleared away. Ablin pops up on the edge of the box, takes one touch to kind of tee the ball up into the air, and then unleashes an absolute howitzer of a volley that just sings its way into the top left corner. I mean, a complete showstopper. One of the goals of the season. He ends up, being voted man of the match, and he's finally off the mark for the season. A player who I really enjoy watching. I'm glad that he stayed in Ligue 1, and he is finally off the mark in the most spectacular fashion imaginable.
He's interesting. I was commentating against Lille, where he hit the bar twice, and there were 2 brilliant shots. He was really unlucky, and he's a guy who hasn't yet become prolific, but I think everybody, in terms of scouts and big clubs, they've all got him on their radar because he's got, I don't know if he's got the lot, but he's got a lot of talent, and often the goals he scores are absolutely brilliant. And Tom, I set you up nicely for the transition there. Where did Mathis Ablin learn his trade? Just up the road from the Beaujoire at
Rennes. And we shouldn't forget that his move to Nantes was pretty controversial because of that. We know that there is beef between those 2 clubs. We saw it again last summer with Valentin Rongier, making the opposite switch in a way, in the sense that he is a former Nantes player who is now wearing the colours of Rennes. And there was a bit of opposition to Ablin going to Nantes initially, but I think when you're that talented and you're capable of scoring goals of that quality, you're usually able to win over even the most ardent fans.
Yeah, a bit of beef. So just showing, Tom, that the English also have some food kind of analogies. A bit of beef between the two. And Tom, your flop from the weekend.
I mean, a bit of an obvious one, but poor old Benjamin Pavard. I mean, he thought he'd already hit rock bottom when Marseille lost at Sporting, in that he was responsible for both goals, plays the Porto attacker, the Sporting attacker onside for the first goal, and then concedes a really peculiar own goal. Ball kind of hits him, flies into the net. And then again against Lens on Saturday, he concedes the penalty that allows Odsonne Edouard to equalise and then scores the own goal that gives Lens victory. And I read this morning that apparently is the first time since Opta started analysing Ligue 1 matches in 2006-07 that a Marseille player has given away a penalty and scored an own goal in the same game. And he put a very heartfelt apology out on Instagram after the game. So hopefully the Marseille fans won't hold it against him for too long.
Good stuff. Listen, we are running out of time and we still haven't talked about Lyon and Strasbourg. So let's jump into this one. Sunday night, another really exciting game. Joaquin Panicelli scored again, a super header at the near post. He's now got 8 goals, but Lyon hit back. Malik Fofana equalised, and then a late winner, a sensational goal from the substitute Afonso Moreira. This was a big win for Lyon, Karim. They have climbed above Strasbourg, Lille and Monaco into 4th place. And overall, probably a win that Paulo Fonseca's team deserved.
Yeah, definitely, because even if the second half was less entertaining than the first one, we can say that at the end, Lyon managed to show consistency. Well, they show some resistance, and they could show mentality as well, because it was quite hard, even if they were 11 against 10 after the Corey's red card. But still, they barely managed to provoke some great chances, except in the last 5 minutes of the game with the last goal of the game, obviously. But just before that, there was a massive opportunity for Lyon. So, yeah, they didn't let out, and they didn't say, well, we tried, but we'll just keep the draw at the end. So yeah, very huge congratulations to Lyon, because when we remember what happened last summer with Lyon, they were on the verge to be plunged to into the second or third tier of French football because of financial issues, and especially with John Textor. So yeah, it's been quite a great success for Lyon, and they fully deserve it.
Yeah, really good start to the season for Lyon. They had those two defeats, but now back to winning ways. They're 2 points off the top. Tom, this game, we have to talk about the big moment that could be costly for Lyon, actually. Ismail Doucouré tackling Malik Fofana from behind. The referee was called over to review the decision. He gave Doucouré a red card, and Malik Fofana taken off on a stretcher. He was in hospital later on Sunday evening. I haven't yet read reports. We're hoping that it's not as serious as it looked, the injury to Fofana, who is so important, isn't he, for Lyon? But that was obviously a really big moment in the game. It meant that Lyon had most of the play in those closing stages, and they got the winning goal. Brilliant goal from Moreira, but it's a bit of a bittersweet win despite that.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, you never like seeing a player being stretchered off, and particularly when it's a player as young and as exciting as Malik Fofana. So fingers crossed it's not too serious. And it was the moment that changed the game. I mean, the balance of play prior to that had generally been Strasbourg in possession, and I thought the way that Lyon set up against them was really intelligent, because Strasbourg want you to press them. They do everything they can to bait the press. Mike Penders will stand on the edge of his area with his foot on the ball. The centre-backs will knock it around, slow things down, trying to tempt their opposition up the pitch to engage with them, and then they pick them off. And Lyon just refused to do that. They had a mid-block basically on the halfway line, and they didn't really engage with Strasbourg's players until they started to approach Lyon's territory. And one of the consequences of that was that, apart from Panicelli's goal, which was beautifully constructed, Strasbourg found it really difficult to get going. And at that stage of the game, when the sending off occurred, it was 1-1, and Strasbourg were kind of trying to pick holes in Lyon's back line, and not really making any progress. And I think that the incident was unfortunate because Doucouré is entitled to attempt the challenge that he attempted to make. He kind of comes in from behind and from the side. I think ultimately what was kind of fatal for both him, but unfortunately for Fofana, it was Fofana's own bravery. As Doucouré slides in, Fofana makes sure to plant his right foot on the ground, to make sure that he's going to win a foul for his team, to put his body between Doucouré and the ball. And that was exactly the point of contact as Doucouré slid in. So, yeah, I mean, it was a red card every day of the week. Very unfortunate for Fofana, but then that set up the platform for Lyon to go and dominate the end of the game. And in the end, it took an absolutely incredible goal from Moreira, his second in consecutive games, after his goal in the Europa League to give them victory. But given the way that Lyon had kind of taken charge over the last sort of 20-25 minutes, I think it was deserved.
Yeah, Tom, it's interesting. You say 100% of a red card. I think there's a bit of a cultural thing going on here as well, because I saw that Liam Rossigna after the game said for him it's not a red card, and he's being absolutely hammered by a lot of people, particularly Lyon fans, for saying this, given the state that Malik Fofana is in. But he is saying the referee has refereed the injury and not the challenge. And this is something that you see in France, and it is accepted in France as part of the rules, if you like, that the referee sometimes will wait to see if a player is injured before deciding if it's red or yellow. And I think in England, it's all about the challenge, the intent, obviously you need to be in control of your action. But I'm not defending Liam Rossigna here at all. I think in this circumstance, it's ill-placed really to be complaining about that decision when Malik Fofana has gone off on a stretcher. But I don't know what you think, Karim, but I think this is kind of an English viewpoint a little bit, insofar as in England they don't necessarily, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, you watch more English football than me, but they don't necessarily sort of take into account the state of the player. It's all about the challenge itself.
I think there is scope for a decision to be upgraded in light of a player's injury, even in the Premier League. You're right that it is something that we perhaps see more of in France. But I think in this instance, I think Liam Rossigny is wrong. You see the slow motion replay, and at the precise moment that Fofana plants his foot in the turf, Doucouré slides in and just bends his ankle forward in a really dangerous way. So I think the only decision the referee could have taken was a red card. So, they ended up making the right decision in the end.
Yeah, and Doucouré slides it from behind so that Fofana couldn't see him, even if he decided to make that contact happen, but still it was hard for him to see him. And yeah, I agree with you, Matt, because in France, we can't accept that kind of harsh challenge. Yeah, for us, it's 100% red card. There is no discussion. And I didn't understand Liam Rossigny's post-game reaction saying, well, we wish Malik Fofana the best for his recovery, but that's not a red card. I mean, when we look at the pictures, that's still a red card. I mean, there is no discussion. Maybe in England you could discuss on it in the Premier League, and I often watch the English Premier League, and sometimes I'm surprised by some ref decisions. But yeah, for us in France, I mean, there is no discussion about the fate of Doucouré on that challenge.
Well, terrific victory anyway for Lyon. Fingers crossed for Malik Fofana. Elsewhere at the weekend, Monaco got their first win under Sebastian Pocanoli, 1-0. Mohamed Salisu with the goal against Toulouse. They're up to 6th, 3 points off the top. Angers got a big win, 2-0 over Lorient. Prosper Peter, 18 years of age, and Sidiki Sherif, also 18, both scoring. That takes them above Lorient and out of the bottom three. I saw a nice stat that Peter and Sherif, with their ages combined, are still younger than Olivier Giroud, which, bit harsh on Olivier, but great to see Angers' young guns doing well. Big win for them. Like Angers, Le Havre have got 9 points after defeating Auxerre 1-0. Abdoulaye Touré's goal leaves Auxerre second from bottom on 7 points. And that pretty much concludes the podcast. There is more action on Wednesday night, though. So very quickly, Tom, can you let me know which game you're looking forward to watching and why?
I'm going to go Toulouse-Rennes. Toulouse, who've been in reasonably good form of late, got a decent win away at Lyon shortly before the international break, scoring a fair amount of goals. And of course, Rennes, huge amount of focus on Habib Beye, my former Canal Plus colleague. And if he is to turn this situation around and hold on to his job, you think Rennes could really do with a win in this one.
Is it harder to get Rennes winning or work as a pundit on Canal Plus? I guess you've only tried. I guess you only tried one of them, Tom.
I mean, I can only comment on the one, but I guess Habib's experiences suggest that talking about the game is slightly easier than actually doing it. Maybe.
Fair enough. Karim, what game are you looking forward to on Wednesday?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Marseille versus Angers, because as we talked earlier, Marseille had a terrible week and they have to be back on track with a win against Angers. But it's going to be as obvious as it seems on the paper, because Angers has such a good defense, by the way, with their goalkeeper Hervé Kofi, which was a good replacement for Yaya Fofana, the Côte d'Ivoire international goalkeeper. And yeah, you talked about the two forwards, Peter and Sherif. So I'm very eager to see Angers maybe overperforming against Marseille. And we know what can happen in Marseille. They have a good curse in September up to last week, but it can go on the other side as quick as it was. So yeah, I will be cautious for Marseille. I don't want to be pessimistic for them, but we know that a crisis can occur quite quickly in Marseille, and we can go from being the best team in the world, winning the Champions League, to being the worst side of the French League One. So interesting to see the reaction of Marseille at the Stade Vélodrome.
Yeah, they're not pressing the panic button after those two defeats. But if they lose at home to Angers, Angers haven't won at the Velodrome this century, I believe. So they can't really afford to lose that. They need to win that, and we'll have to wait and see. Lots of matches, lots of exciting action coming up on Wednesday. Thank you very much, Karim Balde and Tom Williams. It's been a pleasure to talk French football with you this morning. And thank you so much to everybody for tuning in and listening to us. We will be back next Monday. No podcast coming up after the midweek round, I'm afraid, but we'll have a bumper edition for you next week, I promise. Thank you for joining us once again, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.